everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us today. We have a special edition for you because you've seen it by now. California is literally burning, those massive, destructive wildfires in both northern and southern California. So we have full team coverage for the next hour. We're going to be talking about how hard those firefighters are working to battle this blaze, the people, the residents who have to evacuate, and what that experience is like. And of course, we're going to be talking about how climate change is playing a role in all of this. But first, we're going to start in Southern California, where that Getty Fire ignited earlier this week. And our Marcy Gonzalez is on the ground there with the latest. Marcy, what is it like where you are right now?
Hey, Kimberly, we are on a street in Brentwood where we can show you it's just house after house was absolutely destroyed. You see this one right here. This is on a cliffside, and then all of the neighboring homes here are completely destroyed. This fire happened on Monday, and yet firefighters are still out here keeping an eye out for hot spots. Of course, the major concern here today are those strong Santa Ana winds. There's actually another fire burning in Simi Valley that started around 6 o'clock local time this morning, so it's only been burning for an hour and a half or so, 2 hours now, and that's near the Reagan Presidential Library. There are homes in that area that are being evacuated, and these winds, of course, are such a major concern because they can take a burning ember and carry them for quite some distance and spread these fires really, really quickly. We're seeing the winds pick up here in the Los Angeles area, and this is expected to continue in Southern California through tomorrow, Kimberly.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about that extreme red flag warning that was issued, because this is the first alert of its kind.
It is. It's the first time they're using that word extreme, and that shows you just how serious they are about this concern. They're saying this could be the worst wind event in this area since 2007. They're saying wind gusts could be up to 80 miles an hour. That's hurricane force. I mean, 80 miles an hour, that's enough to knock down the average person standing outside in that. So these are really strong winds they're looking at here, and that's why firefighters all across this region are out, keeping an eye out on hot spots like this and just across the area, because these fires really can spring up anywhere at any time, especially in these extreme conditions.
Yeah, and Marcy, while you're with us, I just want to go back to that Getty Fire for a second, because we know that it's very close to the 405 Highway number 1, but they know now how it started, correct?
That's correct, and they actually have video of when it started. They believe that the strong winds early Monday picked up a tree branch and blew it into city power lines that were activated, and so that sparked, and that spark quickly turned into flames, and with these winds, those flames quickly spread, and so they have that video now, and that's why they're doing these widespread outages in several parts of California, because of concerns with power lines that something can blow into them and spark and cause fires just like this one.
Yeah, and we know from that fire there were like over a dozen homes that were destroyed. Have you been able to talk to the residents in the neighborhood?
I mean, this has been a terrifying experience, not only for people in this neighborhood, but really all across this area. There are thousands of people just in this area that are still under mandatory evacuation orders. And so it's scary, it's concerning, and it's frustrating, too, because people are just wondering when they're going to be able to come back into their homes. And with these wind warnings extending into tomorrow, it could be quite some time for some of these people.
All right, Marcy Gonzalez right there in Los Angeles. Thank you so much for the updates. And guys, we're going to move to Rob Marciano, who's on the ground in Santa Clarita. That's just north of Los Angeles. So Rob, I want to ask you again, first tell us where you are, because this house behind you obviously destroyed pretty bad.
Yeah, this is a house that was impacted, pretty much destroyed by the tick fire this past week. And we know the owner of this home. We talked to him. He and his family managed to get out. But he did come back with us the day after to check out what is left of his house. So it's a heartbreaking scene, but you can see it's getting banged around quite a bit by the winds that are blowing now here down this canyon. They've been measured at 68 miles an hour already. So it's been sustained 30, 40, and then gusting over 50, 60 here just the past couple hours. This is more or less the front lines of this Santa Ana wind event. It is typically the case. They start in the eastern part of Southern California and then move towards the water, and we're seeing that today. This area of the homes that weren't affected by the fire, they're under blackout conditions. It's one of the many areas that have been shut off as far as the power goes, and a lot of these homes have been evacuated as well. So this home is impacted by that tick fire, now getting impacted by these winds driving that easy fire in Simi Valley, and obviously we're most worried about some of the other fires, the Getty Fire in particular, maybe seeing some of the embers being drawn up and tossed into the air and carried and start a new fire. So that's our biggest fear with these winds and why they've labeled it extreme fire weather danger, not just today, but right through tomorrow, Kimberly. Yeah,
and speaking of the Simi Valley, we're seeing live shot right now of the valley, very close to the Reagan Presidential Library. You can see it there. Rob, I want to ask you again about the Santa Ana winds because they happened before, but what's making them so strong this time?
Well, this time we have an even colder air mass that's dropped into the Rockies and into the central U.S., and many of our viewers are going to feel that colder air mass for their Halloween holiday, and it'll eventually go over towards the East Coast. But we're in this pattern where we get these little short waves that kind of drop down into the Rocky Mountains, and they bring cold air into that area, and it's that cold air and high pressure that basically begins to force the air and create the pressure gradient, force the air towards the west. And then, as you know, it compresses over the mountains, gets down into the valleys, that often heats it up, but more importantly, it accelerates it as it heads towards the coast. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing it accelerate over the ridge tops. We're seeing it accelerate through these canyons and then get down to the valleys and push, in this case, that easy fire in Simi Valley heading towards Thousand Oaks, heading towards Moore Park, and a lot of those areas have been evacuated, including the Ronald Reagan Library. It's getting very close to that facility where I'm sure they have a lot of structure protection vehicles and crews there, hoping to keep the fire from burning in that direction. But looks like it's going pretty good down there, unfortunately, with these winds. It's not terribly surprising, Kimberly.
All right, Rob Marciano right there in Santa Clarita. Thank you for the updates. We appreciate that. And guys, I mean, even seeing the images on the screen, it's nothing short of terrifying. So it's difficult to imagine if this would be your reality, but it is for thousands of people who had to evacuate their homes, sometimes in the middle of the night. So I want to bring in a Southern California resident, Ilar Pormageddon, who lives in Brentwood, California. Ilar, first off, I just want you to tell us how you are and where you actually are right now.
Hi, yeah, I'm actually safe. I'm at work. I'm able to make it into work. And I've just been, trying to stay safe and away from the fires as much as possible.
Yeah, so we're definitely happy that you're safe. Can you just describe for people, all the people who don't live in California, what it's actually like to evacuate in a situation like this and the experience of being so close to a fire?
Right, yeah. So I actually got home back to Los Angeles on Sunday. I was coming from Northern California where my family lives, and they were part of the Marin power outage. So coming from that back to Los Angeles and then waking up in the middle of the night at 2:30 a.m. to those emergency alerts nonstop, it was terrifying. And I was just lying in bed thinking about what I would do, what I would grab, and how I would prepare to leave our home, and started thinking about what my valuables are. And, you start putting a price tag on things, you start thinking about the expensive things, but, I realized it's actually the things you can't replace. I have a cat, and she was just my priority, just getting her in the car with me and getting out of there as fast as possible.
Yeah, and so you didn't have a bag prepared, or you did have one? Did you have time to take anything?
Yeah, I did not have a bag prepared at the time, but I have a roommate. We woke up and we started talking. We turned on the news and we started getting our things together because it started to look a lot more serious than we had thought. So we just got our bags together and threw it in the back of our cars and left the house around 6 a.m.
And we know there's a lot of wildfires in California over the years. Was this your first experience with something like this?
It was, yeah. You see it on the news, you hear about it, especially more recently, but I never thought it would hit so close to home. And it was my first encounter of it being so close to where I live.
All right. Well, we're happy that you're safe. And your parents are also safe there in Northern California?
Yes, in Marin County.
All right. Ilar Pormageddon in Southern California, resident in Brentwood, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. All right, guys, and as we said, that is the experience of thousands of people who've had to evacuate. And up in Northern California, the Kincade Fire is still raging. So I want to bring in Cynthia Shaw. She's a spokesperson for the American Red Cross, joining us from Petaluma, California. It's about 40 miles north of San Francisco. Cynthia, thanks for being with us. I just want to ask you, we keep hearing thousands of people have to evacuate. Where are all of the residents going?
So the Red Cross has 16, Red Cross and community partners have 16 shelters open in Northern California to support the evacuees from the Kincade Fire.
And
but many of those residents that have been evacuated have chosen to go with family and friends throughout the greater Northern California area. So right now we saw last night approximately 2,800 residents in our 16 shelters.
And I just want to see if you can tell us what the evacuation shelters are actually like. What is provided there for the residents that come?
So at the shelters, we have food, we have emotional support, we have nurses to help people replace medications. They can get information. We have space for small animals, pets, to also be cared for. And it's just a great place to be safe while they're awaiting the word on what's happening with the wildfire.
I think the thing that is very wild about all of this is many of the people that are in these shelters may have experienced wildfires before. Have you heard some of those stories?
Yes, I've heard several of those stories. Many of the residents that have been impacted and evacuated were evacuated with the fires a couple of years ago. A number of our Red Cross volunteers in the area are also under mandatory evacuation orders, but they care so much for the community that they've been volunteering 12, 14-hour days to support their community during this time.
So for people who may need to evacuate at a later time, what should they know? How should people prepare? Because I don't know if you heard the resident that we spoke to earlier, but she was saying she didn't have time to grab a bag, just her pet. So how should people prepare if they have time?
So if you have time, you should grab your important papers, maybe even make a digital copy of all your papers, have a thumb drive, have your medicines, supplies for your pets, loved ones, and just have this go bag ready to go. We also in California live in earthquake country, so having this go bag is really important for a number of disasters. And we have a list on redcross.org on how to put together your disaster kit.
All right, Cynthia Shaw, we appreciate the information. Spokesperson for the American Red Cross, thanks for joining us. And to get more on where these wildfires are heading, I want to bring in our ABC meteorologist, Mel Griffin. Mel, good to see you. Can you give us the latest forecast?
Hey, Kimberly. Yeah, we are still dealing with these extreme red flag warnings that go right into tomorrow. We've already seen gusts, 78-mile-per-hour gusts in the Santa Monica Mountains, and that's just going to continue for at least the next couple of hours. So let me show you where the red flag warnings are right now on the map. You can see from Northern California all the way down through Southern California. Luckily, the ones in Northern California are going to be expiring later this afternoon. Conditions will be getting better in Northern California, but that's not the case for Southern California. Look at that high wind warning in effect there. That's the biggest concern. 60 to 80-mile-per-hour gusts continue right into today and again tonight into tomorrow morning. So that's where we have those extreme red flag warnings. You can see the National Weather Service has issued this extreme fire danger threat stretching from Ventura County, LA County to Riverside, San Bernardino, all the way down through San Diego County. This is for those wind gusts, 60 to 80 miles per hour, especially in the mountain ranges that swoop down into the valleys. But the relative humidity, it's that combination with those very, very strong wind gusts and that very, very dry air. You put those two together, and that's where we have our extreme fire danger that can really make fires spread, create new ones. It's very erratic, those winds, when they become this dry. So that is our biggest concern, of course, anywhere from Ventura County down through San Diego County today, tonight, and right into tomorrow morning. So this Santa Ana winds that we've been talking about, this isn't the first event of the season. We've seen these offshore winds of over the last couple of weeks, but this one looks like it could be the strongest, not just this season, but since 2007. And this is kind of why. I want to show you the setup. You see this high pressure centered over the Rockies. The air moving around that high pressure system is very cold and dry. The pressure gradient getting even tighter. It's moving that air clockwise straight into Southern California. It moves right into the mountains, down and up the mountains. The air compresses, it gets warm and dry, and that air accelerates. And those are those strong, dry, high winds that we've been talking about. And that's what creates this Santa Ana wind event that we have been seeing over the past couple of weeks. But because of this setup, why we think this one could be the worst, not just this season, but like I said, since 2007. So next couple of hours and right into tomorrow morning, a big area of concern for Southern California.
Yeah, so you can track the Santa Ana winds, but the fires themselves, pretty unpredictable.
That's right, Kimberly. We kind of have an idea of when these Santa Ana winds are going to start, when they're going to be the strongest. It looks like they're going to be the strongest through about mid-afternoon today. They might weaken a little bit this afternoon, but then yet again, they replenish themselves late tonight into early Thursday morning. So we can tell the timing. We can tell how strong these winds are going to get, 60 to 80 miles per hour, but it's that erratic fire behavior. That's what is really hard to predict, and that's why it's such a dangerous situation down there.
All right, Mel Griffin in our New York weather studio, thank you so much for being with us with the forecast. And guys, so one of the ways to tackle these massive flames are with helicopters flying over those hills and canyons and drenching them in water. You see it there. So I want to bring in Clayton Sandell. He's at an air base close to LA in Riverside, California. Clayton, can you just talk about where you are right now and how the pilots are fighting this blaze? I see you're with someone right now.
Yeah, Kimberly, we're here at the Hemet Ryan Air Attack Base. This is run by Cal Fire. And I'm going to warn you, it's going to get very loud here probably in a couple of minutes. We had arrived here at about 7:30 this morning, and we're hoping to show you some of the aircraft that are out here, some of the tankers and helicopters that are based here. But they got a call right as we were getting here. One of the base managers here, Brian Risden, tell us a little bit about what happened. They had a fire not far from here, right?
So, yeah, they did have a dispatch here in Nuevo. So it's only about a mile away, just over these hills here behind us. So all our aircraft from here got sent to that fire. They're actually overhead right now. They're going to come back in, get another load. I think they were released, so they'll probably take on a load, get ready for the next fire, and they'll shut down here.
Now, this is in Nuevo. It's not far from here. They're calling it the water fire, I guess. They've got structures involved. But was this an early launch? Was it? You normally don't launch this early in the morning, right?
Normally we don't, but since we are having these wind events, they did do an early up on all the aircraft, so we were ready to go at 7 o'clock this morning. Normally they don't come on till 10 o'clock for the fixed wing aircraft out of here.
So how big is the worry then with the wind coming in, all of this going on? You guys are sort of bringing in extra staff. You're ready to go earlier. You're kind of on a heightened state of alert.
Yeah, we are with that wind event. Just like you said, heightened state. We did bring on some extra CWN helicopters to help out. Yeah. And like you said, we are on an early up, so we're ready to go early. As you know, there's been fires starting overnight, so we come in and there's already fires burning.
This is one of 19 air tanker bases in California, I understand, and historically one of the busiest, right?
Yes, it can be. We're one of the ones that stay open year-round, where some of the northern ones close for the winter. Mm-hmm. It gets pretty busy.
So this is sort of ground zero. This is where, in a few minutes, you said the planes will come back in, and they'll park right in here. And again, it's probably going to get pretty loud. But tell me about what will happen when they come in here. They'll have to get more fire retardant. They're dropping water and fire retardant, or what are they dropping?
Yeah, so it's a mix. The fire retardant is basically just water and the powder that gets mixed together. Yeah. The tankers will hold 1,200 gallons of fire retardant, so they're actually landing right now.
Yeah, they're actually landing in now. So, yeah, many of you can see them coming in here. So that is Tanker 73?
Tanker 73, yeah, is based out of here. So he's going to taxi in here. He'll stay running. He'll take a load of retardant, and then I think they are released, so they will shut down and just get ready for the next one.
And before it gets too loud in here, Lenny, I'd love to pan over and just show. This is where the tell us what these tanks are here. This is where the
so those are our holding tanks. So these horizontal ones here hold 12,000 gallons of retardant in each one, and that big tall one is our silo. Holds the dried powder.
Okay.
So it's going to get loud here. He's going to fire up the pump and get them ready to load.
Okay. and you've got some other helicopters, some contract helicopters. These are not your helicopters, but they are here. If needed, they may be called out to go on other fires in the area.
Correct.
So you got extra reinforcements, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here you go, guys. Tanker coming in here. To be put on this tanker?
It's about 3.5, 4 minutes.
About 3.5, 4 minutes, and then he can take off just as fast as they can get down the runway.
Yeah, so it's about a 5-minute turnaround for them to come in, take a load of retardant, and get back out.
Okay, all right, great. All right, the other tanker is coming in now. They're probably going to be busy all day here, flying out of the Hemet Ryan Air Attack Base. I want to thank Engineer Brian Reisden for helping us out. Busy today, guys. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Clayton. He was there in Riverside, California, so you see that there the pilots are working hard, and we're going to move to the people working hard on the ground, working tirelessly to contain those fires, the firefighters. So I want to bring in our Will Reeve in Northern California. Will, good to see you. I want you to give us an idea of what these firefighters are up against.
Well, Kimberly, these firefighters are up against a fire that's nearly 80,000 acres in size. The Kincade Fire really ripping through the hills here in Northern California. I am at the Santa Rosa Fairgrounds, which right now is base camp for the 4,000 plus firefighters from all over the region, as far up as Washington, as far down as San Diego. They are all on their way out here. Trucks as far as you can see, getting ready to head into the fire. They got their morning briefing, they got their orders, and now they're heading out here. And this is really a city within a city where every firefighter from all around comes to organize, to get some rest when they do 24-hour shift on, 24-hour shift off. At least they hope that's what they get. Erecting tents wherever they can. Some trailers have beds in them, but mostly they're just getting rest and food wherever they can. This is the exit where all the trucks go out and drive up into the hills. Then beyond the exit there is a tent city where they get their food and they eat with their strike units and their other teams, and they enjoy the camaraderie with other firefighters. And then further over there is this whole sort of nucleus of all these operations. They have internet here, they have communication lines. There's even retail shops selling Kincade Fire Memorial t-shirts. It's really quite an operation. 4,000 plus people here, up here to fight this fire, and they're doing a great job putting a lot of pressure back on this fire to make sure that it doesn't hit any of these communities in this wine country, Northern California area.
And Will, have you talked to any of them? Because I'm wondering how they're feeling. They're doing a lot of physical labor in extreme heat, and you said that they're just sleeping and then going right back out to work. How are they feeling with all of this?
I mean, Kimberly, these are humble, exhausted heroes. We met Jason yesterday. He had just come off the front lines on a 24-hour shift. We were walking around where all the tents were, and he happened to be there, his face covered in soot. He looked exhausted, but he was nice enough to just talk to us and tell us what he was doing, and none of them want credit. You ask them, like, what does it feel like to be a hero? And they basically say, I wouldn't know, because they don't feel like heroes. They're just doing their jobs. This is what they signed up for. They get a rush out of fighting this fire. We asked another firefighter from Fresno, a guy named Nick Martino, what is a good day for a firefighter? And he said, a good day is when everyone gets to go home and see their families, talk to their families, and be with the ones they love, and know that other people get to be with the ones they love because of the work that they did as firefighters, protecting homes, saving lives, saving property. And so far up at this Kincade Fire, that's what they've done. There have been structures lost. There have been acres burned. but it could be and would be so much worse if not for the hard work of these firefighters working through the night and through the day to make sure that this fire doesn't do as much damage as it's capable of, because the high winds when they are up are severe. With the dry conditions, makes for a serious fire recipe. These firefighters battling back, doing such a great job, and it all starts right here at the base camp here in Santa Rosa.
Yeah, and just before we go, just so we have an idea, how far is the fire from the base camp? I'm just curious.
It depends on which part of the fire you're going to. It started way up in the mountains, probably about 30 to 40 minutes from here up Route 101. This is an area called the 101 corridor, that famous highway here in California. But you can probably take a 20-minute drive to the front lines here. The fire's so big that it's close to some places and far away to others. It's also, a lot of it is inaccessible. This is really mountainous, hilly terrain with one-lane roads going up the mountains where it's hard for a fire engine, the ones they call pavement princesses, hard for them to get up into those mountains. So they're letting those areas burn because there are a few structures there. Everyone's been evacuated from those areas and from a lot of areas here. Hundreds of thousands of people, in fact, evacuated. But it's mostly wilderness or close to wilderness up there. They're letting that burn and controlling the areas closer to communities, not too far away, but the fire is not bearing down on people, mostly because of the work that these firefighters are doing, guiding the fire, using their skills, their techniques, their experience to make sure the fire stays in areas where they are comfortable with it being and burning, and then they're setting up lines to make sure that the fire doesn't go anywhere that they don't want it to go.
Yes, and I'm sure the residents feel deep gratitude for them working so hard. Will Reeve right there in Northern California, thank you so much. All right, guys, and when we come back, plenty of animals are still in danger as well. So we're going to be talking about how they are being made sure to be okay, and another big day in Washington. We'll be right back.
ABC News, straightforward.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. Doctors. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, nice to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Talking about a good morning. Imagine starting your day off with friends. What's better than that? You know, like the crazy smart friend who always keeps you in the know. The friend with a huge heart and smile who just makes everything better. Imagine hearing from people who open your eyes and your heart. Imagine knowing what's coming next in the day ahead. Well, I get to live this each morning together with you. Imagine that. How blessed am I? And that's what makes it such a good morning, America.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
All right, we're back with our special edition of the Debrief. You see it right there, live pictures of the Simi Valley burning near the Reagan National Library in California. We are giving you hour-long coverage of those monster wildfires in Northern and Southern California, affecting the lives of so many residents in so many ways, their homes. But then we're going to talk about what happens to all of the pets and the animals. So I want to bring in Romina Puga on the ground in LA at an animal sanctuary called the Gentle rental barn. Romina, if you're there, you know, there's so many things that people have to worry about. So this barn that you're at actually takes the animals in.
Yeah, so we're at the General Barn. They normally bring in animals that are evacuated, but actually last week with the tick fire, they evacuated half of their own animals. The fire was so close. It was right there where that fence is, right across the road. We had video that they showed us, and they were trying to evacuate. They evacuated about half of their animals onto these trucks, but these aren't just dogs. They have cows, horses, pigs, sheep, llama, big animals. They have a 3,000-pound cow that they had put on the truck last week and then waited till the winds actually changed direction to get him off. So it's a big feat, and this is Ellie. She's one of the founders of the General Barn and lives on the property. The winds have kind of died down a little bit, Ellie, but what was it like this morning when you guys got up?
Yeah, this morning was crazy. We woke up really, really early to no power and to hurricane-like winds. The dogs were going crazy. And my first thought was looking out the window going like, oh my God, are we going to be okay? It's really scary.
And you guys haven't brought in those animals that you evacuated because you're waiting for these winds to die down. But now also this morning, you heard a rumor that there might be a hot spot around here. So what's going through your mind? What are the next steps right now?
Yeah, I think with these high winds comes the risk of those hot spots reigniting where we had fire last week. And so we're just kind of at the ready, you know, we're at the ready to evacuate a second time if we have to. One of the animals that were harder loaders, they're still at their evacuation site. We didn't want to bring them home just to have to evacuate them again. And we're just on fire watch, just waiting.
Kim, so it's not just humans and families, but also animals and big animals like these that need to get out at a moment's notice in times like these. Kim?
Yeah, and Romina, one thing that you had mentioned to us when we were talking to you earlier about this, you mentioned something about the barn using acupuncture to soothe the stress of all of this for these animals?
The acupuncture. Yeah, so they actually, it is a stress for the animals getting on these trucks, getting off the fire, the smoke, the winds. They've used things like acupuncture. Can you tell us a little bit about why it's important to soothe the animals? What other things you guys have done? And I know you guys are doing something right after this as well, right?
Yeah, what General Barn specializes in is taking in animals that have nowhere else to go because they're too old, sick, lame, or scared. And so we specialize in very old animals that have mobility issues on a good day. And so when you load them up into a trailer, you've got minutes to get them on. They have to brace themselves in the trailer. They have to get on and off several times. It really wreaks havoc on their old bodies. And some of these animals have been through hell and back before coming to the General Barn. And so displacing them away from the General Barn brings up all that fear again. And so all those original issues like mobility and fear and pain, we've got to start mitigating now that they're home, trying to return them back to normal. So we're giving them acupuncture, massage therapy, ultrasound. We've got energetic healers coming to the property. We're doing everything that we can to restore them back to health and wholeness where we were before the fire.
Yeah. And usually they're taking in animals here. They have a GoFundMe to help with all these evacuations and movements on their website, which is generalbarn.org, right?
Yeah, generalbarn.org. We're asking the community to support us so that we can be self-sustaining and getting our own rescue animals out, and we can help the community in a greater capacity get them out when their fires are not threatening our own neighborhood.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Kim?
Appreciate that, Romina. Right there at the General Barn. So interesting. So many layers to this. Thank you for showing us that. All right, guys, and for more on animal rescues, I want to bring in Dr. John Madigan. He's a veterinarian from UC Davis. So, Dr. Madigan, you know, you're a part of a emergency response unit. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, we're a group of faculty, students, and staff at the University of California, Davis, at the School of Veterinary Medicine. And we have a veterinary emergency response team, which consists of those folks. And we are deployable when a request comes in from the Office of Emergency Services in adjacent counties to respond to help with animal-associated issues.
Yeah, and so what I want to know is, like, what is it like when you go into these homes? You're actually saving the animals. What is it like when you're going in and trying to rescue them?
Well, we're part of a coordinated group, so we'll have an escort from Animal Services. You have to get by roadblocks and those kind of things. You still have fire crews working. And you simply identify animals that need to be triaged at that point. So we make a decision Is this a shelter in place where we can mark the animals for daily care, and they are safe right where they are? Or do we have to take them to a shelter where they can be cared for there? Or do they need to be sent to a veterinary hospital? And then we further divide that group into those that need intensive care versus those that need relatively minor veterinary care.
And are there any cases that really stick out to you that were particularly difficult or memorable?
Well, the memorable ones are the ones, of course, where you go somewhere and the evacuation didn't occur. The fire moved too quickly. The house is completely destroyed. There's fireplaces that are fireplaces that are just standing, and there's animals that are deceased on that property. So those are the hard things to see, and then the others, we feel like we can help them, so we just direct them to the right place.
And where are you headed now? Because it looks like you're in the car. Are you going to do a rescue at this moment?
Yeah, we're stopping it at a shelter facility where there's about 120 horses, and we're just doing a welfare check with the veterinarians that are there to see if they need supplies or other things. And then we have a transport trailer with us, and we'll be escorted in and doing search and rescue all day today in Sonoma County in the areas that were previously completely inaccessible because of the fire. It's been suppressed enough to allow units like ours to go with animal services and do those on-site triages that I spoke of and take care of things.
And how many animals would you say you've rescued in, say, this week?
Oh, I'm not a numbers guy. We have about 150 animals at the one shelter. It's an all creatures, great and small. There's goats and sheep and horses, some with medical problems. And then at another facility, there's 110. Those have all been evacuated. And I got to say, the good news is that there's been a really big effort to inform people to leave early. And a lot of them have done so. So we're providing the care to those that were moved. And as you heard about all the stress that occurs with those things, there are medical issues, and we're taking care of those. And so today's a day that's the biggest day we're going to have in the field is today.
All right. Amazing work. Dr. Madigan, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for bringing it to the attention of the public. The animals are important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And of course, while these fires are blazing, I know people are wondering why they're so intense in the first place, and is this the new normal? So I want to bring in John Keeley. He's with UCLA. He's an adjunct professor in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. So John, thanks for being with us today. I'm going to ask the question that everyone's asking. Is this because of climate change that these fires are so intense right now?
There's very little evidence that climate change is causing Santa Ana winds to become more intense and these fires to become worse. We've had these winds every single autumn for as long as we've been keeping records, well over a century. So the winds themselves are not uncommon. Sometimes they're more intense than other times. So there's very little evidence that climate change is causing this. We do have evidence that some of our fires, particularly forest fires in the West, may be affected by climate change. But these wind-driven fires have other factors that are far more important. The fact that we're getting these autumn winds causing fires is something that we've seen many times in the past. What we're seeing today, though, is we're seeing more and more of these fire events, and they're having worst impacts on humans. Now, some of that is due to the fact that we've had an extreme drought in Southern California. It lasted from 2012 to 2018 and caused a lot of dieback of vegetation, creating tremendous fuel problems. And that's part today. But the other probably more important factor is humans igniting either through power lines failing or directly through arson during one of these wind events and then extreme fire events. certainly one of the reasons we're seeing more of these fires today is we've been adding more and more people to the landscape. Since the year 2000, we've doubled the amount of area burned in California. We've also increased the state by 6 million people. When you add more people to the landscape, two things happen. One, you have a greater chance that a fire will start during one of these wind events. Plus, you have to put people somewhere, and what's happening more and more around metropolitan areas is people are being put into watersheds of very dangerous fuels, and as a consequence, many more people are at risk today than in the past.
So it's so you're saying it's sort of a perfect storm of winds and also the population density are the main factors.
The drought and increased population are almost certainly the two major factors in these big fire events.
So if it's not climate change, as you say, or if that's not the major factor, what can be done to prevent this in the future?
Well, first off, it's not to say that climate change isn't having an impact on some fires. And like I mentioned earlier, forest fires in the West seem to be affected by climate change. But these coastal wind-driven fires don't seem to be affected by changing climates, in part because it's hot enough and dry enough every year to have a big fire. What can we do? Number one thing we can do is work more intensively on fire prevention, stopping fires from igniting during these wind events. That not only involves controlling arson behavior in people, but also the power grid and increasing maintenance, perhaps, thinking more about how we place power lines. For example, in the last decade, our worst fires in Southern California, in fact, throughout the western part of California, has been due to power lines being blown down or igniting fires during these wind events. There's a lot that can be done in terms of the power grid and how we control power.
All right. I appreciate your insight. John Keeley, a UCLA adjunct professor, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. And guys, when we come back, a big day on Capitol Hill. We're going to talk about that and more new details in that Syrian raid. We'll be right back.
ABC News, straightforward. This is what being live is all about.
I can see pushing through.
This is ABC News Live.
Entire neighborhoods are underwater.
The 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News.
There it goes.
Imagine breaking news, live events as they happen, streaming live, non-stop, straight to you. Imagine instant, incredible access to the most compelling live video.
That's a grenade.
Original, on the edge, breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, all the most innovative storytellers, all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want, free. And imagine the most celebrated, epic live events and moments,
This is live?
all playing out right before your eyes.
See those flames behind me?
Go
We're
there
trying to
now.
put this fire out right
With
now.
ABC News Live. Think of it as your live streaming adrenaline rush.
Just look at all of the smoke here.
Real, raw,
Welcome to the
live.
Columbus Zoo.
No matter where the next step takes us, we're taking it. Wow.
That's what first responders were worried about.
And go deeper inside the groundbreaking exclusives from the campaign trail only ABC News gets. Behind the scenes, exclusive access.
Take you inside for an extraordinary tour here at ABC News Live. This is it.
It's time to go there, be there, experience it, live on the scene. Maybe that's why, in just 1 year, ABC News Live is already America's #1 live streaming news. And imagine this, it's free.
Wow.
Watch ABC News Live right now and anytime, streaming on Roku, Hulu, Facebook, and abcnews.com. It's that easy to go there. ABC News Live.
All right, everyone, and welcome back to the debrief. We're going to move to Washington and the ongoing impeachment probe. New details in that firsthand account provided by Alexander Vindman, the first current White House official to testify. So I want to bring in Karen Travers at the White House and Ben Siegel on Capitol Hill. Ben, I'm going to start with you. There's some new details that we learned about the transcript.
That's right. Colonel Vindman, who's the National Security Council's Russia and Ukraine expert, was listening in on that call, and according to reports first in the New York Times, he actually suggested several changes be made to the rough transcript that was eventually released to the public on that call between Presidents Trump and Zelensky. Now, according to the Times, he was not suggesting there was any nefarious motive behind the reason why some of those changes were not allowed to make it to the final cut. There's a routine process that goes on at the White House about these transcripts, which are taken down by machine, and then with experts listening in, they go back and forth over what makes it into the eventual version that's circulated within the White House. But certainly provides a better picture of what was happening on the White House around this call that is now at the center of this impeachment inquiry in the House.
Yeah, and Karen, this is kind of a big deal because, the White House has been saying for a long time that none of these accounts were firsthand. This testimony obviously was. What is their response to Vindman testifying?
Yeah, well, yesterday you saw the president tweeting about this, Kimberly, saying that Vindman was a never-Trumper, somebody who is not in his corner. And allies of the president, of course, were trying to question his allegiance and loyalty because he was born in Ukraine. But it was notable, I think, to see the pushback from even Republican lawmakers yesterday to say that those attacks crossed a line, and it is not fair to question someone's loyalty or patriotism just because they were not born in this country. Now, on the issue of the memo transcript of that phone call this summer with the president of Ukraine, a month ago, the White House, when we asked about the ellipses, the dots that appeared throughout the transcript, they said that that did not mean parts were not included. It was that were thoughts trailing off there. We've gone back to the White House to see now with Vindman's testimony about things not being included, what they have to say about that. Still no response yet from the White House.
All right, so Bill, Ben, the testimonies continue. Who are we expecting on the Hill today?
We have two State Department officials that are on the Hill today. Catherine Croft is right now with investigators. She was just subpoenaed to prevent the State Department from blocking her testimony. And she is talking to investigators today, and so is Christopher Anderson. They're both officials who worked with Kurt Volker, this former U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, who was part of those key conversations about Ukraine policy with Gordon Sondland and other key players in this impeachment inquiry in efforts to pressure Ukraine to take up politically centered investigations that could help the president in his re-election bid. These are things that he was seeking, concerns that this was being withheld, of course, that military aid was being withheld for these investigations to be launched. So these are people who are helping to fill in a more vivid picture of the back and forth between the White House and Ukraine about this aid that was held, this $400 million in military aid, and these promises of an investigation that are also at the heart of whether the president created any sort of impeachable offenses here.
Yeah, so definitely more to come. And Karen, before we go, the president, he's been pushing Republicans to defend him on substance when all they've been trying to do, their strategy has been to defend him on the process, to talk about the process of this inquiry. So why would he push them to do substance?
I think the president wants to see Republicans out there saying what he is saying, that the call was perfect, he did nothing wrong, and that's it, end of discussion. Last week, the president, in a cabinet meeting, said that Republicans needed to get tough and needed to fight for him. We saw then 2 days later, Republicans storming that secured room up on Capitol Hill, complaining about the process, saying they were being left out of decisions and not being allowed to play a part in this impeachment inquiry, which of course is not true. But now the president seems to be suggesting that Republicans need to change their tactics here, saying they have to fight on the substance. He says if they do with that, then close it out. Go with substance and close it out. That has been difficult for Republicans. I think that's why we've seen them focus on the rules here and focus on the refereeing by House Democrats. Now we're going to see this impeachment inquiry likely head into its next phase, a public phase. That's going to make it even more difficult for Republicans to talk about the process and mechanisms here. Some Democrats say it's because they cannot defend the president on his actions, so they have to talk about everything else.
So much to keep track of. Karen Travers at the White House and Ben Siegel on Capitol Hill. Thank you guys for the updates. We appreciate that. And we're going to move overseas to northern Syria. As you know, the world's most wanted terrorist, the leader of ISIS, was killed in a raid. And now President Trump tweeting yesterday that the #1 replacement for the ISIS leader was also killed by American troops. So I want to bring in Ian Panel on the ground in northern Iraq. Ian, can you just give us a little idea of who this replacement was?
Yes, I think a replacement might be an overstatement. He was a potential replacement. I think the idea that he was a #2 is definitely over-egging the pudding. It was Abu Hassan al-Muhajir. He was the ISIS spokesman. He was also killed in a very similar kind of operation. In one way, it was a US Special Forces operation together with SDF, this is Kurdish support on the ground. But interestingly, Dr. Russell Travers, who's the acting director of the US National Counterterrorism Center, is testifying on the Hill right now. And he said 3 fascinating things, which again put a slight lie to the claims that this was a #2. He said, first of all, that ISIS has a very deep bench. In other words, there are many replacements ready to take the place of al-Baghdadi. #2, he said there are something like 14,000 ISIS fighters here in Iraq and across the border, showing that it still has large-scale potency. And ultimately, he said that the death of Baghdadi, while important, won't have much impact. Now, we're still waiting to hear from ISIS. They normally take a while to confirm these deaths, and because we've had a lot of false alarms, they've been skeptical online. But there is a suggestion that perhaps in the coming hours we could hear something from ISIS. It may be offering condolences, it may be the usual eulogies. It may, just may, be the announcement of a replacement.
And Ian, before we go, we're learning about the role that this supposed defector played in this raid. If you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, fascinating detail, Kimberly. I mean, it's almost the stuff of some kind of spy drama. Apparently, this was a disgruntled ISIS fighter who was part of the inner circle of Baghdadi. Apparently, members of his family had been killed by ISIS. However this transpired, he ended up becoming an informant for the Kurds, passing detailed information of the layout of the house, which obviously aided U.S. Special Forces as they went in on this raid. We know that the operative managed to get a pair of underpants and some blood samples so they could verify DNA. Washington Post also reporting that after the raid, he was taken back with the US Special Forces. He was brought out of the country, reunited with his family, and possibly he's going to receive part or all of the $25 million bounty that was placed on Baghdadi's head as the world's most wanted terrorist. No confirmation from the State Department or the Pentagon of this, or indeed from the SDF on the ground, but that's what the Washington Post is reporting. Kimberly?
All right, Ian Panel right there in northern Iraq with the latest. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And guys, when we come back, a big decision from the NCAA.
ABC News, straightforward.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqi doctors. Batatas. Ismail? Yes. David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, nice to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Talking about a good morning. Imagine starting your day off with friends. What's better than that? You know, like the crazy smart friend who always keeps you in the know. The friend with the huge heart and smile who just makes everything better. Imagine hearing from people who open your eyes and your heart. Imagine knowing what's coming next in the day ahead. Well, I get to live this each morning together with you. Imagine that. How blessed am I? And that's what makes it such a good morning, America.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now, imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Debrief. We're going to move to some big news from the NCAA, taking a major step that would eventually let college athletes start making money. So our Zachary Keish joins me now to break this down. Tell me what this means and what it doesn't mean. Because,
yeah, it's complex. I think there's a lot of questions and certainly a little skepticism about what this actually means. But the deal, at least initially moving forward, is that they're opening up the possibility that players will be able to get paid for their name, image, and likeness. We're talking about appearances in video games. We're talking about jerseys that are sold at the campus bookstore. And so certainly this is a step forward for the NCAA, but people who are really in the trenches and who have been fighting for these issues for a long time are skeptical if they're just a stalling mechanism or if they really are serious about allowing players to be compensated for this incredible amount of money that they make for these universities and the leagues as a whole.
So just to be clear, nobody's getting paid right now?
Nobody is getting paid right now. Except for, of course, the people who have been getting paid. I mean, the coaches and again, the universities are making this incredible amount of money. The players aren't. What we have seen is that there are some things happening on the state level. In California, they signed a law in September that would prohibit the NCAA from punishing players who receive endorsement deals as of 2023. Now, they have said, the NCAA has said, this is not in line with the California rule, which is essentially kind of an open market situation. A Republican congressman from North Carolina has something similar on the books that looks more at kind of tax code, but would essentially be an open market, again, for players to get endorsement deals. It doesn't seem on par with the NCAA has decided, and so it'll be interesting to see how these kind of competing visions for the future actually pan out.
Do you think that's the reason why the NCAA made this move, because of Governor Newsom and the other states that are sort of making this happen?
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. They are getting a lot of pressure. These are conversations that have been going on for quite some time now, but they've really ramped up.
And LeBron endorsed it.
LeBron endorsed it. But again, certainly pressure, but even yesterday's announcement, on many levels, it still would require players to kind of abide by this antiquated system. And so, again, it's not really clear exactly how these players who are out there laying it all on the line, some of them will turn pro and some of them will benefit in that way, but many of them won't. And so it's really interesting to see how this is going to play out and really how serious or intentional the NCAA is about trying to rectify this.
And right before we go, I mean, this is for you personally. You were an athlete. What does this mean for families?
Oh, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Again, name, image, and likeness is different than being a pro player. But certainly, as an athlete myself, I know that I had to take out a small loan to connect the dots. Right? There's trips that you have to take home to see your family. You know, between semesters, there are unexpected expenses that come up. I grew up in a household where certainly education was the foundation, but it was on us to pay for it, and the scholarship checks just don't cover it. Now, the NCAA has made some improvements recently in terms of trying to cover the cost of living. They're also guaranteeing scholarships and doing some things like that, but there is still kind of an overwhelming conversation out there led by these voices, as you mentioned, like LeBron and so many others who think that the system is profiting off these players, and at the end of the day, many of them have nothing to show for it.
All right, Zachary Quiche, the news on the NCAA. Appreciate you being here.
Appreciate you.
And guys, continue to take care of yourselves. If you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. Then you can check out World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'll see you tomorrow.